What's up, everybody? This is episode 15 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. Thank you for supporting me. I see the views. Thank you for supporting me on this venture. Go check out our stuff on YouTube, Instagram TV, Facebook. Now, today we have a special guest on here. He's had more than 500 wins in his career, 7 state public championships, 4 New York State Federation titles. He's coached a who's who of names in Westchester County history, like Ben Gordon, Jabari Hines, Isaiah Cousins, Kevin Jones. The list goes on and on. So we'd like to welcome the great Mr. Bob Cimmino. Coach Cimmino, thank you for coming on to talk to me, and share your testimonial.
My pleasure, Dave. Thanks for having me on. Glad to do a Zoom meeting. Got a lot of time to spare, and this Zoom is definitely something that'll be used in the future.
Absolutely. So, first things first, what's Bob Cimmino's coaching philosophy?
Well, the players have to enjoy what they're doing. We go into a new year, and we want to make sure that the finished product is going to be successful young folks who learn a little something about life along the way, learn some camaraderie, and have a general positive outlook on life. What we're doing right now with them is helping to build a foundation. We want their best days to be ahead of them for sure.
Absolutely. So, how long has basketball been a part of your life?
Probably 45 years plus. It's just been a great tool for my life. I've used it to all of my friendships can go backwards to hoops for the most part. Hoops is like music. It's something that everyone can understand, and you can really tell a lot about a person when you either watch them play, watch them coach, or watch how they enjoy the game.
So, are you originally from Mount Vernon?
As this Zoom goes right now, I'm sitting inside my apartment on Gramerton Avenue in Mount Vernon. I've been here all of my years, born in Mount Vernon, living in Mount Vernon, and I don't hope to die, but I'll probably die in Mount Vernon.
In Mount Vernon. Got you. So, did you ever play, sports during your formative years?
My whole group of friends, as we grew up, we were attending Mount St. Michael, and we were taking the creek bus every day to Mount, and we happened to have a coach back then, he shall go nameless, who didn't quite appreciate our talents, and we didn't appreciate his philosophy. So we stayed and we honed our skills in the playgrounds of Mount Vernon and in the Mount Vernon rec leagues. And again, the friendships that I made back then led to everything that I do today. Got pretty good at this game. Even though didn't play organized high school, I ended up getting cut at Fordham University. And I think that's what got me into coaching. I think I was better than some of the players there, but the coach back then didn't even give me a second look. Didn't want anything to do with this here walk-on. So I got madder and madder, and I wanted to make sure that when I got into the game, that I was going to try to show a little fairness.
What year did you graduate from Mount St. Michael?
7.5.
Okay, nice. So, graduated from Fordham in 79?
Nope. I was a pretty bright student in high school, and I had enough of book learning. I ended up going to Fordham, and after about a year and a half, I found myself cutting class.
Oh, no.
It wasn't for me, and I wanted to put some green in the pocket. So I quit, and I went to work for the post office for quite some time.
Did you go back to school?
I did. I got into coaching. I was coaching at a forerunner of today's Junior Knights. Back then, it was called St. Ursula CYO. Very proud of that program. I coached over 20 years there. And, you know, we were basically the farm system for Mount Vernon High School, for the great Tony Ferrantino of Miami Heat fame. And we were producing more and more players. Then one day I was sitting having a beer with a couple of former players, and one of them turned and said to me, "Hey, Cimmino, why don't you teach?" Nothing came out of my mouth. I had no words to answer. I had probably 60 or 70 credits from Fordham. I said, sounds like a good idea. I could probably be a better coach if I was actually in the building. So I took it upon myself to go back. First, I went to College of New Rochelle. They had a great program. They just recently closed the whole school, unfortunately, but they had a great program for older folks called the School of New Resources. And I was in my early 30s, and I was by far the youngest in the classrooms. So I got my degree there, then went on to Mercy for a couple of master's degrees. And, you know, in the meantime, I started coaching Marshall Reef, who coached Mount Vernon to an undefeated season, state and feds chip in 1991. Him and Joey Galgano got me into coaching, first the summer league, then the JV. Then I was teaching, and the natural progression ensued.
So, before we go into your history with Mount Vernon. So basically, I want to ask, what's you know, the basketball culture like in Mount Vernon?
Oh, it's a special place to be. It definitely is. You know, growing up, there was always the great Mount Vernon High School teams of 1970 and 71. The Williamses. Later on, Rodney, Scooter McCrae, Lowe's, Moore, so many great players. And, you know, you kind of took note of it. I attended some games. I knew how good we were. And the playgrounds back then were alive. 4th Street, Hartley Park. My little crew hung out at a playground where the new Lincoln School is, Lincoln School Playground back in the days. And there was fierce competition from all the playgrounds. And, you know, you walked into a playground, people assessed you, then you went after it for a while. So ball was very deep growing up in Mount Vernon, and it stayed that way. I came into a program that was deep in tradition, and I just wanted to help a little bit.
So at your tryouts, what's the vibe like in the gym because I know there's the school building, 100 Cali Road, and then you have, you know, a whole lot of I know multiple schools from around the city coming in to try out. Is that right?
Well, in 2000, I think it was 2010. Before 2010, Mount Vernon High School had in the range of 2,500 to 2,900 students. And so educational thinkers began to assess that was perhaps too large. So an alternative school, sister school, a school to handle the overflow, we started in additional buildings so that we had the Mandela Alternative Academy for a while, run by the great Dr. Hosea Zalakoffer, who gave me my first job. And we had Thornton High School open up in 2010, I believe it was. So that was the overflow. Now we've been kind of tweaked again. Now Davis, formerly Davis Middle School, and 50, 70 years ago, it was a high school. It was the high school. That's back to being a high school now. That's called STEAM Academy. In the Thornton building on South Fifth Avenue, we have a performing arts magnet. And then we have Mount Vernon High School. So we're all under one umbrella. All the athletes, they come up to Mount Vernon High School where sports is the order of the day.
So how come even though there's these other schools, like how come these other schools don't have, you know, their own teams?
Well, for the most part, facilities. The only comparable gym, there is no comparable gym in Mount Vernon and Mount Vernon High School.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Davis, but that's an older second version. There's no fields for football. So it just, everybody wants to have Mount Vernon written on their chest too. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of proud of that, and that they all channel into the Knights.
So you guys are pretty much the hub of everything on in town.
Same as it ever was. Hopefully it stays that way.
So basically getting back to my original question. So how many kids do you usually attract at the school for tryouts?
Well, varsity tryouts are considerably smaller than JV tryouts.
Really?
Yeah, there's a constant filtering process. It's almost like a tryout process that starts way back in the 3rd and 4th grades. You know, you get the junior knights who have the gym, literally people hanging off the walls. There's so many trying out. Then it progresses. Then you come into the actual high school building after the modified teams have done their thing. Some come in with a reputation. Some come in looking for a reputation. Others I've actually had, I just wanted to see if I could make it. I really didn't want to play. I just wanted to see if I could make it. So a lot of defense mechanisms go into the player's philosophy on the day of tryouts. But an average tryout now for varsity would be, I'd say, about 35. And usually we have 4 to 6 slots. Returning players make up. If I'm doing my job correctly and the rest of my coaches in the program, we kind of know who's who. Very few surprises. Surprises are supposed to be discovered way in the off season. So I always have not a running joke, but if in the health office, the nurse says someone was interested in basketball, I generally ask, did they have to duck to walk into the office? So if that happens, then I seek them out. Otherwise, we just wait. It's such a difficult process to try out. JV could be in upwards of 100. He's had 120 sometimes. You know, players learn. Some say, well, I'm not going to make that team. Oh, I'm a junior. They're not going to look at me. And my coaches, I hear them echo it, and I truly believe in it. We are very selfish coaches. We want to win. If they can help us win and they work hard in tryouts, we're taking them. But the opposite of that, that's difficult for a player to totally comprehend, because most who don't have it, the majority of players who try out get cut. And it's easier to blame something other than the man in the mirror.
So let's get back to the throwbacks. So so you've been coaching at Mount Vernon High School for over 30 years. You were the JV coach for 5 years of your tenure there. Talk about, that experience.
Well, that was a fantastic experience. It was the transition was very easy for me, because in my first year or two as JV coach, I actually still coached the St. Ursula 8th grade. So it was a farm system for me, being run by me in some ways. the JV is just a dream job at Mount Vernon High School because you get to deal for the most part with the best ninth graders in the whole city. And you really see the up and coming stars firsthand. And if you should lose a game, no one knows about it. Very few know about it. It's never in the newspapers. So you get the best of a couple of different worlds. You get to deal with and influence the future of the varsity firsthand, see it growing, see the fellas growing, and you don't have to worry about any Monday morning quarterbacks.
So is the Junior Knights still around?
It sure is. It's run by one of my very good friends and assistant coach for the Knights, Coach Dwayne Murray.
Coach D.
Yes, Coach D. It's run out of the First United Methodist Church, which is on Lincoln and Summit Avenues in Mount Vernon. They have grades 4 through 8.
Nice. So in 1994, you were promoted to head coach of the varsity program. My couple of questions are, how did you feel when you were promoted, and who did you replace?
Sure. My predecessor was a great friend also, who's currently retiring next month from phys ed teaching, Joe Galgano.
Okay.
Joe coached with me at St. Ursula's back in the days. He's younger than me, and he got into the teaching gig pretty early. I think he's finishing 34 years right now.
Mm.
And he moved up quickly. He real student of the game, and he took over from Marshall Reef, who had taken over from Tony Ferrantino. And Joe did a great job, a really good job, and he ended up wanting to go with Louis DeMello into college. So they left to do Concordia for a while. Then Joe was an assistant at Iona College also.
Mm.
So it was an easy transition from Joe.
Did he coach the 1991 team?
He was the varsity assistant to
Okay.
Marshall Reef.
Right. So how was that first team on varsity?
My first varsity team? It was very good, very good. I got spoiled early. We ended up winning the gold ball, playing none other than New Rochelle, and we beat them in an overtime game at the county center. And the star of the day, he's on my staff right now doing great things, was my first scholarship basketball player, Garee Bryant. Garee, I had coached him on the JV. He made varsity before I did. Then when I got the job, I was there for his senior year, and he was just a fantastic athlete. He was totally under-recruited in college. He should have been playing either at Iona or Marist or Manhattan. He ended up going D2, and he ended up being the all-time leading scorer at CW Post.
Mm.
So we had a lot of college D1 assistants napping back in those early days in the 90s. The team was good. We lost in the regionals to a Middletown team, but it was a lot of fun, and I kind of enjoyed it.
Hmm. Now talk about the Mount Vernon New Rochelle rivalry.
Well, believe it or not, it started before I was around. It goes back over 100 years now. Mostly established early on as a football rivalry. Then it just came into hoops. And the two communities are so close, so friendly sometimes, not so friendly at other times. And the ball players play all summer long. New Rochelle used to come to Mount Vernon when we had the leagues. Mount Vernon goes to New Rochelle, now plays at Lincoln Park, outside off of Lincoln Avenue by Memorial Highway. And it is just an intense rivalry that you want to make sure that you play your best against an Ursula.
I hear that. So, talk about the gold ball. You know, talk about the allure of playing for that Section 1 championship at the county center.
Well, as you know, New York State, we're a public high school. We're governed by the New York State Public High School Athletic Association. And honestly, I think we have it over everyone on three separate levels. Number one, we play at the county center for our championships. There is no facility in the state of New York that is better for a high school basketball championship game than the county center. And I'll include Madison Square Garden in that. So that is the Mecca to play at. Secondly, there's not a trophy in the world better looking than the gold ball. It's a pretty simple concept, but I like to tell, and people like to hear me say it, there's nothing that I would rather see than a couple of my players walking around holding that gold ball in county center, eating their nice greasy French fries at the same time. It's just Christmas time and all the great holidays rolled into one. And Section 1, I think we have the best ball players in the state, but I'll say that quietly because I like to let the others sleep on us.
Indeed. Now talk about, you know, the 1999-2000 team. You guys went 28-0. You guys had some really good talents. Dexter Gray, Jomo Belfor, and last but not least, Ben Gordon. Talk about, you know, that team. Like, you guys went through pretty much everybody that year.
All right, now Dexter wasn't on that team. Dexter was on the 04 team.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a really nice mixture of a good senior class and some fantastic underclassmen. So our backcourt was Ben Gordon as a junior. His stock was really rising at the time. He was no longer a secret anywhere. And Jomo Belfor as a sophomore, who was a very close friend of Ben's, played slightly differently, more physical than Ben, but they were both students of the game. Our front line was big. Greg Jenkins. Greg, about 6'8", 6'9" back then. Bruising senior. Jeff Ruland, Tony Childs, they were all over his recruitment. And he ended up going to Iona, had a great career there. We had another power forward named John Plenty, 6'5" bruiser. Humongous sneakers. He had trouble getting big feet, trouble getting sneakers, but he was an anchor, an absolute anchor. And so it was a very complimentary team. And then we had the high school quarterback, which was kind of unusual. Most players tend not to play a couple of sports. Jason Bailey, he just bought into the defensive concept, and he was mean. Southpaw, about 5'11", tough young man. And he was the lockup specialist as far as the backcourt game.
You guys beat St. Ray's and Kennedy in the state up in Glens Falls, correct?
For the final game, we beat Kennedy 60-58. Yeah, and before that, I believe it was St. Ray's.
Wow! Like when the game was over, I'm sure you guys were hyped.
1 minute, Dave. 1 minute. Excuse me, I screwed up there. Kennedy beat St. Ray's.
Okay.
We had the bye that year, so we waited around for the winner of that game, and Ray's came in as a favorite, and Kennedy under the legendary Johnny Mathis, Coach Mathis, they knocked them off with Willie Shaw and J.C. Mathis, his son.
Indeed. Now, when you guys were playing, let me rephrase that. When the game was done, I'm sure you guys were excited.
Well, the game was very, very close as a 60-58, and I remember it to this day, even though it's 20 years ago. So very, very close. And the amazing thing that stands out in my mind is as soon as the game was over, before I could jump up or anything, had this guy with a camera. His name was Mike Quick. He ran up to me with his entourage, and they stuck the camera in my face, and he said, "Congratulations, you are the New York State Tri-State Team of the Year." And I said, "Oh my God, I never heard of that before. It sounded good." So we got a really nice dinner out of it at Madison Square Garden, and the fellows got to walk around the garden and watch a game too.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was.
Then, the 2004, you guys beat Sebastian Telfair in the Federation Championship. Talk about that year's team. You guys had, Jonathan Mitchell, Michael Coburn, they were young, and of course Dexter Gray. Like, talk about that team.
Yeah, that team was something also. The year before, a team, the 03 team that a lot of folks don't talk about, we lost one game. We lost the last game of the year in Glens Falls to Rochester McQuaid's. We were 26-1 that year. And so needless to say, we lost some good seniors. We lost my JV coach, Brian Brown, and his backcourt partner, Ernie Brown, but we had a lot returning for the 04 season. And they were, Mount Vernon prides itself on its basketball because we associate with the Mecca of basketball, with New York City basketball. So my players back then loved to go downtown and hone their skills, whether it be in the summer leagues or with the AAU season. So back then, I think AAU basketball was just something really special, with the Riverside Church, with the Gauchos, with the Panthers, and then the great outdoor summer leagues. Crackers Whack Park, 128th and 2nd. Of course, Colonel Charles Young Playground on 145th with the young Rucker. Those were fantastic places for my players to grow. And they did. Dexter Gray and Keith Benjamin. So we're talking about St. John's and Pittsburgh were with the church. And they traveled with the church, as did a bruiser that we had, Shanty Robinson. Him and Dexter were just tough men. They weren't boys, they were men. And they got a lot better because of our relationship with NYC. Chris Lowe was with Gary Charles and the Panthers, honing his backcourt skills. Jonathan Mitchell, who's now doing some great things coaching at Stetson University. He was a highly sought after Soph back then. And Chris Lowe, who's now coaching at the University of St. Louis, he just had a flair with the ball. And the year before, we did get a great transfer in. We got Mike Watson, who left Rice to come north, and that shook a few people up. And Mike had a rough time at first being accepted with the 03 team, some elbows in those practices, but then he was a big part of 04, as was a young 9th grader named Michael Coburn. Coburn came on the scene. He actually was, to my recollection, he was the first Mount Vernon player ever to make varsity from the start of his 8th grade year. So Mike was a full-fledged 5-year player at Mount Vernon High. By the way, he's also the all-time leading game winner, number of games won as a player. And he has 3 states under his belt and 2 feds. So,
wow.
Yeah, he's made his mark. He's made
big time.
So those fellows were all together, and Bassie came on the scene. We knew them. We knew Lincoln well because KP, Kenny Pretlow, was at the church coaching, and now he was with Lincoln. So there was a lot of fun give and take, even at the breakfast table the morning of the ultimate chip. And the fellas were looking over curiously because there was so many cameras on Varsity, so many cameras. They were in the process of shooting in the line of, what's it called, in the line of fire, I believe, was his film. And we didn't want to be outdone. You know, we wanted part of that limelight too. So CeeLo, Mike Watson, Mike Coburn, all doing their thing, So when Varsity went behind the back, he might have got past one. He didn't get past two.
Wow. Such a good team. Then later on, a couple years later, you guys had Kevin Jones and Sherrod Wright. You know, talk about, you know, coaching them. Were they a part of the 07 team?
Yes, 07. That's when they were part of that chip. Yeah, probably right around that time, I remember traveling out to IS-8, and we would meet in the middle of Mount Vernon, where the cars could pool and players could catch a ride. We'd meet at the McDonald's on Gramerton, around the corner from City Hall. And the car I wasn't familiar with opened, and I saw this one face that I knew, and this tall, gangly kid got out of the car. So the face that I knew was Kevin Jones's brother. I remembered him because he was in the Little Leagues in Mount Vernon. I was affiliated with that for a while, so I knew him. I didn't know his brother. And that day, Kevin Jones would take the ride with us to come on out and watch the fellas play at IS-8. And he just became a great Mount Vernon player. Great power forward. Stoic in presence, always got the job done. Early in his 9th grade season, we were out in Brooklyn scrimmaging Bishop Loughlin, and there was some banging going on. A couple people squared off, and this thin 9th grader, I saw him rush over to protect his teammates. And of course, I wasn't smiling at the time, but I said, boy, I got something special here. And I was right. So was Coach Huggins a few years later. Sherrod Wright, I remember watching him in the small little Junior Knights gym go up and try to make a 360 move, not a dunk, but a move for a score. And Coach Dwayne Murray quickly took him out, quickly. But I saw a lot of promise in that young man. Sherrod preferred the offensive end of the court for quite some time before he got his night values clearly instilled upon him. But they were just great friends. Sherrod and KJ together. That's quite a front court there.
Wow. Oh, yeah. The question I was thinking of, weren't you guys in a documentary around Sherrod's senior year? What was the name of it?
Oh yeah, we definitely were. I'm not going to remember, like Hoop Nights.
Yes.
Something along that. A really good couple of young guys did it as one of their, I think, their college final projects, and they followed us step by step. I think it was really born out of they found interest in us, not so much for basketball, but as for basketball being taken away from us. In 2008, the school board voted to remove sports as a budget cut. It was a horrible, horrible time period, June of 2008. And we took to the streets. Adults really, really galvanized support for the Knights, the whole Knight community, every sport in Mount Vernon. And being the basketball team, we were the focal point. We literally took to the streets, kind of like the fire trucks when the firemen are out there with the boots collecting for muscular dystrophy. We took to the streets for donations, And it was just an amazing time period in our lives. We ended up generating over $1 million. And by September, this committee, under the directionship of a great lady named Ronnie Cox and the Mount Vernon Educational Foundation, brought sports back. So we were saved. And I think they kind of came in saying, wow, this is quite a story. Let's see how these Knights do this coming year. And everything was going really, really well. It was Sharad's senior year. Kevin was a freshman at West Virginia. And things were going well. We had a strong team. Sherrod was the man. And we ran into just one of those games. We won our gold ball. Then we went to Pace University for the regionals, and we played a familiar foe, Newburgh Free Academy. And back and forth, tough game. And we went up with like 2 seconds left in the game. Finally, we blew a lead. We had a 7 or 8 point lead in the last couple minutes, and we didn't make some foul shots, but it looked like we were going to win until they took the ball out. They threw it to just the other side of half court, and this player from Newburgh took a hook shot from 55 feet out.
I remember that game.
And
Wow.
it went in.
That was heartbreaking for you guys.
Horrible. Amazing. Such a good group of seniors. And, to be honest, I had been coaching quite a while. I'd never had a loss like that. And I was I had bad losses before. But again, this was a game-ending, season-ending, career-ending game for many. And it's part of that documentary. You can see it.
Yeah, live on YouTube. For everybody that will probably want to see this documentary, check out Hoop Night. It's on YouTube, guys. It's a 4-part series. So anyway, Coach.
By the way, no need to watch the ending though.
So yeah. So then you have the 2011 team: Josh Dowdy, Isaiah Cousins, and I believe Jabari Hines.
Yes, sir.
Talk about that team.
Yeah. Jabari Hines, New York State, Mr. Basketball. 2010 team, we always like to look a year before. 2010 team, nobody really picked us to win. Matter of fact, quite a few people said, well, who's on this Mount Vernon team? And we ended up playing New Rochelle, our rival, in the county center. And they had a couple of really good ball players. One of them was Mason. Young Mason was on that team, Anthony Mason's son. And they had beat us twice during the year. But Jabari Hines, as a junior, just was phenomenal in practice. I would often lose my temper and get upset because we weren't getting it, how to break their pressure. But Jabari kept me focused and kept the team focused. And we took a couple of charges early in that game and won an amazing victory. We lost again to Newburgh in 2010, but they were a big team. They had a lot of people return, and it wasn't nearly as bad a loss. 2010, when I look back at it in retrospect, was a great, great year. But we go into 2010, 2011 with a lot of returning players. And Jabari Hines and his backcourt mate, Khalid Samuels, they had been together forever. I remember sending Garee Bryant. Garee was my JV coach back then. I said, you better go to the boys club and you better get down there and make sure these guys are on track to play for you. And Garee sure did. And they were just talented early, and they took care of business. Jabari's popularity was really growing. I remember it was Halloween of his senior year, and there were kids from New Rochelle who actually dressed up, and they wore a Jabari Hines costume at Halloween. That's how popular he had become around the county.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was something. we had a nice backcourt. We had a special shooter, Damani Ashton. He's now coaching in the college ranks also. Maybe he'll be getting his law degree too. We had Jamel Slim Walker as our center, and he was a shot blocker. He did his thing. Isaiah Cousins on that team, he was just growing and growing. He was a tough cookie in the backcourt. He was a junior, and he was doing his thing. Quadir Lavelle, another scholarship player. Tough people, tough young men who, when you're growing up, you hear about all this history, and the familiar call in Mount Vernon has now become, and I'm very proud of it, the older players who graduate will come into the gym, and we ask them to watch a practice, speak after the practice, and they'll talk in not so many kind words to some of the players, and they'll say, "You're not made until I see you up on that wall at 100 Cali," because we put the championship teams in big photos in our gym. And it's, ice is nice. Ice is nice on the hand. We do that when we're fortunate enough to win. But as much as the players talk about ice, they like to show the ice off. What they talk about is being on the wall at Mount Vernon High School.
Indeed.
So that 2011 team, we had a tough season, a very good season. We had very few losses, and we had taken a trip out to Hawaii. So we were doing what we were supposed to do. We got handed a couple losses, though, in the SNY tournament. And Coach Hurley with the great St. Anthony's team put a hurting on us in one of the games. And I remember our point guard, Khalid Samuels, was so frustrated that game, so mad at me. He went and sat at the far end of the bench, which I had never seen before. And actually turned it out to be a blessing because it put so much of a spark. That's actually the school district call it, but I'll let it ring if you don't mind the rings.
That's fine.
Okay. So Khalid ended up taking that upset energy, that anger, and transformed it into saving us a couple times when Jabari's shot was off. So they just melded really well with each other, and they liked each other. And we won the states. We took care of business like we were supposed to, and it was the first time that the Federation was being played in Albany, and that was something new. I'm always a big fan of Glens Falls. I just think that's where basketball should be played for the chip. I like to travel. I know ball is at its best in New York City, but I want to go to Glens Falls. Maybe because I watched Hoosiers too many times. That's where I want to go. And now it was in Albany. So I said, all right, we went to Albany. If we're going to Albany, let's win. Let's win. And it was this team that was definitely in our way, Christ the King. And we ended up beating them in an overtime game, an amazing game. And we were crowned state and federation champs then. And by the way, the other gravy that you asked about how it is to be in Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon does it right when her team wins. We get a parade throughout the whole city also, and that was a great parade.
Now talk about, the last championship team, 2017. You guys had, some talented players, Jason Douglas-Stanley, Noah Morgan, Greg Calixte. Talk about that squad.
Yeah, those guys. Wow. That class came in, that senior class, 2017, came in with as high expectations as any class that we've had. And 2016, we were badly upset in the county center. Knocked the wind out of us. It was tough. We lost to a good Fox Lane team. They beat us. And we were very upset about that. The 2015 team that we had made it all the way to the States, basically with a group of sophomores, and done quite a bit of damage. Great season in 2015. So we thought we were going to win everything in 16. Without saying it, we thought, and we didn't. So now the writer, our local sports writer, not Danny Lowe, I'm sorry.
Was it Josh Thompson?
It was Josh. Danny Lowe is on my mind from the 2000 teams. And before, he did the 91 team story. So Josh writes the last go-round or something like that. And enormous pressure on these guys. Now, I feel the pressure because I want them to win so badly. Greg Calixte, Noah Morgan, they're just Eric Monroe, Eric, just great people. And I want them to go out like they were supposed to. So added pressure on the whole program. We had great underclassmen again. Jason Douglas-Stanley was coming into his own, as was Dimitri Roberts. And they were a version of Jomo and Ben, or they were a version of Jabari and Khalid. Those two came up together. It's so nice when you're in a community where the players stay together and want to ball together and have careers together, because then they make their own stories together. And we played really, really well. We beat a very, very good Pine Bush team in a regional game that was held at White Plains High School. They were a tough team. We beat them. Then we went on and we were going to play a team that had been ranked ahead of us most of the year, Fairport, for the chip. And we sat in the stands and watched them wipe out a team. I said, oh my God, great passing. They shoot well too. We're going to have our hands full. And my assistant coaches, Brian Pritchett, Garee Bryant, Dwayne Murray, Brian Brown, all my assistant coaches. They gave me a great game plan, gave me a lot of good things to think about. And we came in and we just, at our pace, we beat Fairport. And it was a special victory because these guys were vindicated. 2017 was now vindicated. That was one of those games where there was so much pressure to win. And we did. We ended up losing in the Feds to a good Long Island Lutheran team. They beat us by 10. And that was sad. Fellas wanted to go out, but they got their picture in the gym. They got ice for their hand, and they got a parade, and all of Mount Vernon feted them.
That's awesome. So talk about, this year's team. You guys had, somewhat of a struggling year. You had a 14-10 record. Talk about that. Talk about this season.
Yeah, it was record-wise. This was certainly a tough year. We had a group of seniors coming in who had not logged that many minutes. Great people, but there was not that much on-court experience. So we had to go after it. We had Troy Hubstead returning for us, who was a 3-year starter, a workhorse, an unorthodox big man. And Troy would help to captain this team, along with Irv Patrick, who had been on varsity since his sophomore year, but just recently had started to take a leadership role. So those two came on as captains, and we had a really good summer. We played in a few different summer leagues. We did work, but we lacked shooting. We weren't a great shooting team. Our best shooter was Troy Hubstead. So it's one of those dilemmas. Troy at 6'6", your best shooter and your best rebounder. It's a real trick from when a 6'6" player hoists a three to also get him to rebound. So it was tough. It was a tough season. We lost more than our fair share of games, so there was a lot of character building. But let me tell you, this senior class, I never heard a disparaging word in the locker room from them, never heard back talk. They just accepted it. They continued to accept coaching, which was a real tribute to them. They weren't used to losing. They were in Mount Vernon. And as the losses piled up, they certainly could have reverted or moved on to a different course of action, blaming perhaps their lack of playing time, blaming their teammates, blaming the coaching staff. They did none of that. They just focused and focused and focused. And I was very proud of them the whole way. I'm as proud of this team as I am. I guess it's because you get on in years and you see more. I'm as proud of them as any winning team that I've ever had because of where they came from and who they become. And I'm going to think so much of them as citizens of Mount Vernon down the line. We lost to a good team from Horace Greeley in the county center. We made it all the way to the championship game, and we beat some good teams along the way to get there. And there was just a lot of glue on this team. So you're looking at a proud coach.
So talk about, you guys go to Hawaii and Canada a lot. Which tournament do you guys enjoy more? The Iolani Classic or the other tournament in Canada?
They both have their good points. The tournament in Canada in Edmonton that we've been to a lot of times, it's called the REB, R-E-B, the REB tourney. It's run out of Jasper Place High School in Edmonton, Ontario. And I'll just share a quick story there. I'm a pretty young social studies teacher. In my second year as varsity head coach, there's a knock on my classroom door. No cell phones back then. And they say, Coach, there's a phone call in the social studies department. So I walk down the hallway, somebody covers my class, and I say, hello. And the gentleman says, yes, this is Mr. Brian Bukowski. I'm the tournament director at the REB Classic in Edmonton. I hear you have a good group coming back for the 95-96 season. We want to know if you're interested. And I knew I had Yaakov Williams, who's now a trustee on our school board. So he's my boss. Colin Watson, great player, went on to play for Fordham and the great Nick McCarchick. Lamont Radcliffe works with our city's youth to this day, Fat Dog. Joe McCurdy, whose son now is doing his thing with the Junior Knights. Joe played at Marist, scholarship player for Marist. I knew I had a really good group of a good senior class of 96. I wanted to reward them. So I said, sure, I'd like to. I just have to price how much a bus would be and figure out expenses. So there was silence on the other end of the phone. And the guy says, excuse me, Mr. Cimmino, we're in the Canadian Rockies. You're not going to be able to take a school bus. So I said, no cheese? He said, no school bus. So the trip would end up costing upwards of $5,000 back then. And I just mobilized the forces. I was helped out by a gentleman named Mr. Jim Finch. He was Department of Public Works Commissioner at the time and a fervent Mount Vernon fan, and he helped us. We raised the money, went there, and the reason I'm building up to this is because the people in Edmonton absolutely love Mount Vernon, New York. The friendships that we've made over the years there are just to this day so rewarding. Now, we went there, and Dave, I'll tell you, it was 40 degrees below zero the first time we went. Literally, you could feel your nose hair freeze up. when we got out of the vans, you had to open the hood, take a wire and run it to the post to keep it plugged in so that you'd still be driving. Now, never since we've been back there, ever since after that, the kids all think I'm lying. The new players think I'm lying because it's in the 30s and, 50 degrees one time. Oh yeah, coach, it's really cold up here. But that one time you could ask those players, and the atmosphere was just totally warm. So we love those people. And Edmonton had the world's biggest indoor mall. So we took a group from Mount Vernon and we go inside a mall and you hear things like, Coach, there's a beach in the mall. Coach, there are tigers over there. Coach, there's bungee jumping. Dave, I'm just going to knock this phone off the hook for a minute. It's annoying.
It's okay.
We love Edmonton for a variety of reasons, but Hawaii's Hawaii. As the people in Hawaii are super to us, but going to Hawaii after my first trip there, which was a great trip, I'll tell you that in a minute. I was just walking around and I was turning to people and I was saying, excuse me, can you tell me why I live in New York? Hawaii is amazing. I put it in my list to remember possible sites to retire to. And the coaches, you get a group of players who have never been there and you hear the coaches talking like children waiting to open their Christmas gifts. And so it rubs off a little bit. And then when the players get there, some of the things that we do with them besides basketball, they talk about forever. Go to Pearl Harbor, which is amazing. We do a luau with the players. We tour the North Shore for the surfers. It's life-changing. So we love that. And that first year we were there, we ended up playing Montrose Christian, big-time school. We beat them in overtime in the semis. And then we went up against this team that was quite popular called Oak Hill Academy. And in the tournament booklet, Mount Vernon was known as the mystery team because we were 5,000 miles away and some people in Hawaii didn't quite know our pedigree. So we got to Oak Hill and in the elevator we met someone named Rajon Rondo, Josh Smith. So they had a pretty good team. And we had Dexter Gray, Keith Benjamin, Shanty Robinson, Chris Lowe, Mike Coburn. We had the 03-04 team. And we were with them. And second half, we cut it to 6. Rondo got teed. Coach Steve Smith, who's still there at Oak Hill, great friend of mine. We're making this run. And he's looking down the bench and I know his mind is saying, so I put this kid Rondo back in who got the tee, or do I let Mount Vernon keep going on this run? Well, eventually Rondo got back in the game and it was just a little too much. Rondo would slice through like a hot knife through butter. And then if we converged on him, he'd throw the ball high up on the top of the backboard and Josh would go up for an alley-oop dunk. So they ended up beating us, but we were no longer the mystery team in Hawaii, and we made great friends there. So to answer your question, I'll never turn down a Hawaiian Invitational, but to Iolani, but I feel great too going to see my friends at Jasper Place High School.
So talk about, your long-time sponsorship with Nike.
Nike's just a very, very good partner to be with. I remember working the early Nike camps. Those used to be so much fun. The All-American camps, I went to Indianapolis back in around 02 or 03. There was the Nike Super 6, which was huge. It was played at Madison Square Garden.
I miss those days.
Oh, those are such great days. And Nike has done so much for the sport. And the ultimate, you know, I don't know sneakers. I admit it to my close friends. I'll admit it to you, Dave. I'm not a sneakerhead. Matter of fact, I'll put on a pair of sneakers and I'll hear the kids talk and say, "Oh, that's that," or "That's that," and I walk around feeling special for 5 minutes. But I'm more happy that my players, like you ask players over the years, you know, a couple of years we wore Adidas back in the mid '90s. Felipe Lopez's brother, Tony, was the Adidas rep. And the Adidas never brought a smile to my players' faces.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. To this day, the swoosh, it's either, you know, it's just a great quality, and Michael and the swoosh has made it magical. Onto LeBron and just so many players, and kids want to be like Mike still.
Indeed. So so the current 19, who are some underclassmen that we should be looking out for?
Seniors first. We got a good transfer 2 years ago. A year and a half ago, he came home. He's a Mount Vernon guy the whole time, but Xavier Rulano, he had been at Trinity Catholic in Connecticut. And after we were upset in 2016, I believe, after we lost 2 years ago, at Easter break, I come into my office and this kid walks in with his uncle, and it's Xavier. He had just transferred out. And I knew the uncle. He had done some coaching of the swim team in Mount Vernon. And I said, "Well, you're going to have to try out for the team. I'll treat you in the off season like you're a returning player because you're from Mount Vernon. I know you're good. You've been coming to our summer camps." So Xavier's one tough guard. He's about 6'1", 6'2". He goes to the basket. You could be on his arm and he'll finish a play with you. And now he's improving his outside shot. Also from that senior class, we have Youssef Adai, a 6'3", small forward that just really loves the defensive end. And he ends up getting that stance better than most. And we assigned him a lot of duties to cover the other team's best player. We've got a kid named Jomo Belfor, who reminds me that he bleeds maroon and gold. And so his heart is always there, and he had some important minutes for us. Our underclassmen, I'm going to take a little sip of water. I don't want to be too excited, but I am. Coach Brian Brown's JV team this year was one of the best that I've seen in years. The 9th and the 10th grade class. Those are strong classes at Mount Vernon High. It's also the biggest JV team height-wise that I've seen in a while. So we've got a really nice combination. We brought up a 9th grader at the end of the year named Dylan Cologne, point guard extraordinaire. He gets the job done. He's a student of the game. He's getting better and better. It's going to be handed to him. The bus keys are going to be given to him in a year or so, and he's going to have a lot of company with him. We have Leon Simon, another sophomore, just working really, really hard. And then the blood is there. Jabari Hines' nephew, an outstanding sophomore, Jasir Barnes. I really enjoyed watching Jasir and Leon playing hoops in the sun this past summer. Jasir is working really, really hard. So I'm very pleased, and I'm leaving out on purpose a lot of names, because if I give you 3 more of the younger guys' names, I'm going to upset the next 5. But the cupboard is not bare at 100 Cali. Pantry's well stocked.
So this is my final question. What's next in the future for Bob Cimmino and the Mount Vernon Knights?
Well, we're very busy with Zoom workouts. My two of my assistants, Danilio Hutchinson, he's my weight room guy. Coach Dilly, he also is a coach of the Junior Knights 7th grade team, and Coach Brian Brown, math teacher extraordinaire at Mount Vernon High School, who's my JV coach. They both run we do workouts 3 days a week right now. And it's just such a tough time to be a high school player right now. So we're trying to keep the fellas together, and we're trying to make sure that they think in a positive direction. None of us know when we're going to come out of this mess. There are so many question marks that we just want to keep the family unified. And the honest part about it is we're going to look back at this time period. We are, and we're going to say from March of 2020 until this time, this is the time period. And we tell our players, do you want to come out of that time period blaming why you didn't get better? Or do you want to look at that same time period and say, this is why I passed other people by? So that's what we're looking for. We're looking for those Knights who understand that they've got to get better. And I think we have them. We have a group of about 22 to 25 right now, who they're from grade 8 to 12, and they're buying in. So I don't know if we're going to have summer camp. Doesn't look that way. Maybe summer camp would be outside at Hartley Park. I've run summer camp now. I've been the director of the Mount Vernon Recreation Camp for more years than I've been the varsity coach. So I would hate to see that end. It's kind of like the breeding ground. It takes the Junior Knights, it takes the rest of Mount Vernon, the mods, all brings them into the summer, and they're taught by the Knights. I get to hire my coaching staff and my Knight players to help indoctrinate the youth for what's going to happen and how the path to future knighthood looks. So we're just working really, really hard. We're also going after the grades. We use Schoology for distance learning. And I want all of my players to even do better than when they were in the classroom. I want higher grades now because they can. There's a lot less distractions. So trying to make sure that they understand that the word discipline is their friend. It is not what so many people see. The word discipline is just to us, it means handling your business so that nobody else has to tell you what to do. And we're seeing some players march to their own drums, their own beats, and they're going to be very, very successful. So the Knights are in a wait and see approach, ready. If we have the green light, we're out there, whether it's with face masks, if we have to wear gloves, whatever it is, we're going to do it.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Coach, for taking this time out to talk with me and sharing your testimony. And I wish you nothing but success at 100 Cali Road moving forward.
Hey, Dave, you're just a great person for doing what you're doing. I really appreciate your Instagram page. I try to get the younger folks to follow you. Some of the stories that you come back, I say, oh yeah, I remember that. And there's a lesson in there. So please keep doing what you're doing. It's so important to our beloved New York City game of hoops.
Indeed. Well, everybody, this is episode 15. Come check this out on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Have a wonderful day. Be safe. Be blessed. Peace.